Somewhere on Earth, someone has a stroke roughly every 40 seconds. By the time you finish reading that line out loud, another brain has been hit. Stroke kills close to 6 million people each year, ranks as the second leading cause of death worldwide, and is the single biggest reason adults end up living the rest of their lives with permanent disability. Here is what nobody states clearly enough. In a very large share of cases, the brain hands you specific warnings hours or even days before the catastrophic event. You only need to know what they look like. If you want health information explained without drama and without sugarcoating, hit subscribe and tap like. I'm Dr. Emily Chen, and stroke is not the "you were fine, you fell, you woke up in the hospital" story most people imagine. In the overwhelming majority of cases, it is the predictable endpoint of vessels that have been deteriorating for years. Anything predictable is at least partly preventable, and that is the entire point of this video. Two different events people call stroke. When people say stroke, they are grouping together two very different events. The first is a hemorrhagic stroke, where a vessel in the brain ruptures. Blood spills into the brain, compresses neurons, and many of those patients do not survive. The second is an ischemic stroke, where the vessel does not tear, it gets plugged. Blood flow to a section of the brain stops, and the cells in that territory start dying within roughly 4 to 6 minutes. Ischemic strokes account for about 85% of all strokes, so that is the form I'll focus on today. Why every minute counts. Your brain weighs around 1.4 kilograms, roughly 2% of your body weight, yet it consumes about 20% of the oxygen you inhale and about 25% of the glucose in your bloodstream. It is a control center that never powers down and needs an uninterrupted fuel line. Choke that line for a handful of minutes, and neurons begin dying in ways you cannot undo. In stroke care, time is not a metaphor. It is brain tissue. The 72-hour warning window. Most viewers miss what's coming next. For a brain artery to suddenly close, the setup usually took years. Damaged vessel wall, accumulating cholesterol and clot material, a steadily narrowing channel. This is the final step in a long, quiet process, and along that road your body almost always sends signals. The catch is that nobody ever taught you to read them. In medicine, those early signals are called a transient ischemic attack, or TIA. Transient just means temporary. Picture your carotid artery, the main vessel carrying blood up to your brain. Over years, a fatty plaque develops on its inner wall. The opening narrows. Then one day, that already tight vessel briefly spasms. Blood flow halts for seconds or minutes. The brain region fed by that artery essentially goes dark. You experience a stroke-like symptom, then the spasm releases, flow returns, the symptom evaporates, and you assure yourself you're fine. What the research consistently shows is this. A TIA very often precedes a full ischemic stroke, frequently within the next 72 hours. That 3-day window is your chance to prevent the disaster outright. Most people squander it because the episode was short, weird, and then gone. These warning episodes typically run from about 30 seconds to 10 minutes. That brevity is why they slip past us. You can be in the kitchen, the shower, climbing out of the car, and by the time you register what just happened, it is already over. But each one is your brain transmitting a very clear final message. I am about to be in serious trouble. Here are the 5 biggest red flags, and what is actually happening inside you when each one shows up. Sign 1. Brief loss of vision in one eye. You stand up, head toward the kitchen, and suddenly one eye goes dark or hazy, as if someone dropped a black shade over it or rubbed gray petroleum across the lens. Within seconds, or at most a minute, sight returns. So you chalk it up to standing too fast or staring at a screen too long. The reality is that the shade is almost always a tiny clot or a fragment of plaque that broke off the inner wall of your carotid artery, traveled upstream, and momentarily lodged in the artery feeding the eye. That eye artery is not a random side branch. It comes directly off the internal carotid, the same vessel that supplies your brain. When the fragment wedges into it, the retina loses its supply for a moment, and what you see is darkness or smear. When the clot drifts onward, vision clicks back in. You got off easy that round. The same particle could have ended up 2 millimeters to the side, in a brain artery instead. And that version is not a 1-minute eye blackout. That version is permanent loss of speech, paralysis on one side of the body, or death. Neurologists call this amaurosis fugax, fleeting blindness. They treat that phrase the way you would treat a smoke alarm at 3 a.m. Full alert, urgent workup, no waiting. Hospital records keep showing the same arc. A person ignores 2 or 3 of these eye episodes, and the next event is not in the eye at all. It's in the brain. Sign 2. Sudden one-sided numbness or tingling. The second warning sign is sudden numbness or tingling on one side of the body. The medical term is paresthesia, but a friendlier way to think about it is your skin briefly going offline. It can be a whole arm, just the hand, half of the face, or one full side. It feels like pins and needles, cotton or rubber. The defining feature is that it appears out of nowhere while you are sitting, walking, or talking, runs for a few minutes, and clears on its own. Sleeping on an arm is different. There you compressed a peripheral nerve, and once posture normalizes, sensation returns. With a TIA, the arm itself is fine. The problem lives in the brain region that maps sensation from that arm, and the episode has nothing to do with how you were sitting. One more detail. Stroke symptoms tend to be one-sided because each brain hemisphere senses the opposite side of the body. When both hands go numb at once, the more likely culprit is the cervical spine. But sudden one-sided numbness that fades on its own is a strong enough signal to get evaluated. Sign 3. Sudden loss of coordination. The third warning sign is a sudden hit to your coordination, what people describe as the stagger you would swear came from drinking, except no alcohol was involved. You are on a flat, familiar floor, and out of nowhere your foot lands an inch off. Your leg feels rubbery, or you stumble into a wall. Or a wave of intense spinning hits so hard that you grab a chair, even though you weren't moving fast and didn't whip your head around. The brain region in charge of balance is the cerebellum, which sits low in the back of the skull. It is constantly calculating where your body is in space and how much each muscle should fire. It gets its blood supply from arteries that climb up through the bones of the neck, what doctors call the vertebro-basilar system. If flow there drops sharply, even for a few seconds, the cerebellum essentially glitches. That is the moment you veer sideways, misstep, or feel a violent vertigo for no reason. In clinical practice, these episodes get written off as bad shoes or I was tired, and only later does it become clear they were small cerebellar attacks. Ordinary dizziness has an obvious cue: rolling over in bed, turning your head fast, a known inner ear condition. Spontaneous, intense dizziness paired with any trouble walking a clean line should be treated as a possible TIA until a clinician rules out a vascular cause. Sign 4. Sudden speech breakdown. The fourth warning sign lives in your speech. To be precise, if you occasionally blank on a neighbor's name or cannot summon the word toothbrush for a second, that is not a stroke sign. That is an everyday tip-of-the-tongue moment, more common when you are tired or stressed. What puts neurologists on alert is when your speech suddenly falls apart so badly that even you notice something is wrong. Most people have 2 main speech regions in the brain, usually in the left hemisphere. Broca's area helps you assemble words and send motor instructions to the tongue, lips, and jaw. When that area loses blood flow, you understand everything around you. You know what you want to say, but the words come out slurred, clipped, or stuck behind your teeth. Wernicke's area handles comprehension and sentence assembly. When this region is in trouble, a person may speak fluently but produce a stream of unrelated words and may not follow simple instructions. If any of those speech disruptions appears suddenly and then dissolves in a few minutes, that pattern is textbook TIA, not I was tired. A speech glitch that fixes itself is not a free pass. That is your home alarm shrieking, going quiet again, and you deciding it was probably the wind. Sign 5. Vitiligo plus new, severe headaches. The fifth sign is less obvious. It is a combination of a specific skin pattern and a new, unusually severe headache pattern. The skin condition is vitiligo, patches of pale or completely white skin where pigment-producing cells have stopped working. Vitiligo is an autoimmune process. The immune system attacks your own pigment cells as if they were intruders. When the immune system is misfiring like that, it tends not to stop at one tissue. In some people, the same inflammatory process quietly attacks the endothelium, the paper-thin lining of cells coating the inside of every artery, smoother than any Teflon coating. When the endothelium is healthy, blood components glide past and don't catch. When inflammation roughs it up, things start sticking to it. Cholesterol particles, platelets, inflammatory proteins. Those are the building blocks of plaques and clots. Vitiligo alone does not condemn you to a stroke. But if on top of it you are developing severe headaches unlike anything before, that combination deserves a full vascular workup rather than a wait and see. Most headaches aren't vascular at all. A very common driver of frequent head pain is arthritis in the upper neck, where in the small joints between the second and third cervical vertebrae, which refers pain into the head with no involvement of any brain artery. Chronic headaches should not just be silenced with over-the-counter pills indefinitely. They need to be decoded with a clinician, especially when their character changes or they pair up with any of the other warning signs. What actually wrecks vessels? From the inside. One of the biggest myths in stroke lies right here. My cholesterol number is in range, so I am safe. Stroke risk is not just about what is circulating in your blood. It is just as much about the condition of that endothelial lining. Go back to the non-stick surface idea. While the coating is intact, nothing sticks. Once it gets scratched, everything starts to adhere and burn on. Enemy 1. Chronically high blood sugar glucose is your cell's fuel, but to cross into endothelial cells, it needs insulin to open the door. When your body does not produce enough insulin, or your cells stop listening to it, you can be drowning in blood sugar while the lining cells themselves are starving. Starving cells weaken, lose their shape, and can peel off the wall, leaving rough scar-like patches behind. Those patches can't constrict and relax properly with changes in blood pressure, a loss of what doctors call vasomotor reserve, and they make perfect docking points for low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, platelets, and other blood components. Over time, those deposits grow into plaques. All of this happens years before anyone tells you that you have diabetes. Even mild prediabetes is enough to quietly damage the endothelium for a long time. Enemy 2. Smoking cigarette smoke carries thousands of chemicals, dozens of them known carcinogens. For stroke specifically, two things happen at once. Toxic compounds slam into the endothelium and cause direct chemical damage and inflammation. And nicotine and carbon monoxide make your blood thicker and stickier. Platelets clump more easily. Clots form more readily. A damaged, inflamed wall plus thick, sticky blood is the textbook recipe for plugging a brain artery. That is why smokers carry roughly 2 to 4 times the ischemic stroke risk of non-smokers with otherwise identical numbers. Enemy 3. The blood pressure paradox. Most Americans have heard that stroke comes from high blood pressure, so they panic when the cuff reads high and breathe out when it reads low. Yes, chronic hypertension is one of the strongest risk factors because over years it batters vessel walls and accelerates plaque formation, and it is the main driver behind hemorrhagic strokes where a vessel bursts outright. Here is the twist. An ischemic stroke often hits not at the peak of blood pressure but at a relative low point. Picture a brain artery already more than half narrowed by plaque, like a hose with a kink in it. As long as system pressure is high enough, some water still forces through that narrow segment. Drop the pressure and flow through that pinch point can fall to nearly zero, especially if a small clot has just settled there and there isn't enough push to move it along. Overnight, blood pressure naturally dips by about 15 to 20%. That is normal physiology. But in a person with a plaque-narrowed artery, that nighttime drop can be enough to convert a partial blockage into a full one, especially if a clot has formed on that plaque while you have been lying still. That is one reason some people go to bed feeling fine and wake up with stroke symptoms, or are found that way in the morning. Where age fits. In stroke isn't only an older adult problem, but age does shift the picture. Risk climbs sharply after about 50 and roughly doubles with each additional decade. In older adults, the leading drivers are atherosclerosis, long-standing high blood pressure, and heart rhythm problems. But around 10 to 15% of strokes occur in people under 45, and those younger cases show a different mix of causes: congenital vessel abnormalities, aneurysms, weak bulging spots that can rupture, clotting disorders, autoimmune conditions, and head or neck trauma. One more thing about age: the speed of vessel damage from the same risk factors changes. After about 40, plaque buildup and endothelial injury from smoking, high sugar, and high blood pressure tends to run roughly twice as fast as it did in your 30s. That is part of why clinicians get more direct about controlling those factors once patients move through their 40s and 50s. So let me ask you, how old are you right now? Your age shapes how quickly your vessels respond and which causes of stroke matter most for you. Drop your age in the comments so I can get a sense of who is watching. Your 72-hour action protocol. Now the most practical part. If you have already experienced one of those 5 warning signs, even if it felt small and disappeared in under 10 minutes, you have roughly 72 hours where a great deal can be done to prevent a full-blown stroke. The aim is not to panic. It is also not to waste the window. Stroke specialists emphasize how important it is not to be alone in the days right after a suspected TIA. Plan this with family and your doctor, especially if you live alone. If a more serious episode strikes and you suddenly cannot speak or move, you need another set of eyes, someone who can see it, call 911, and reach you quickly. Tell a close friend or relative what happened so they can check on you. Stroke guidelines also push hard on this. Do not drive yourself in after a possible TIA. Losing vision or arm control for even a few seconds at highway speed is life-threatening for you and everyone else on the road. Work out a transportation plan with your doctor in advance. A blood pressure check is usually one of the first practical steps. If you or someone nearby can measure it and the top number, systolic, is around 180 or higher, or the bottom number, diastolic, is around 110 or higher, that fits a hypertensive crisis, not just an elevated reading. A crisis like that is itself a strong stroke warning, and most guidelines recommend calling emergency services immediately at that point. Ask your doctor to spell out this threshold for you. One rule from stroke medicine is non-negotiable. Never start blood-thinning medication, aspirin, anticoagulants, or anything similar, on your own based on a friend's advice or something you read online. Remember the 2 stroke types. Thinning the blood can help in some ischemic situations, but in a hemorrhagic stroke, it makes the bleeding faster and worse. No clinician can tell the difference by looking at you. It takes brain imaging, typically a CT scan in a hospital. Get evaluated and let the medical team decide. While you wait for help, body position matters. Lying flat is generally better than sitting upright. Many clinicians suggest legs slightly elevated and the head neutral, not bent forward, not thrown back, so the neck arteries don't kink. Avoid smoking, alcohol, and hot baths or showers in that moment. Confirm all of this with your own physician. Keep a written list of your regular medications somewhere easy to grab. It can save real minutes for an emergency team. And if 72 hours pass with no new episode, that does not mean you are in the clear. It means you have been given a second chance, and you still need to use it. 3 evaluations worth asking your doctor. About 1. Carotid duplex ultrasound, a specialized ultrasound of the neck arteries. Unlike a basic ultrasound, duplex imaging shows both the anatomy of the artery and how blood is flowing through it, including whether flow speeds up and becomes turbulent at a narrowed segment. If your carotid is narrowed by more than roughly 70%, that is called hemodynamically significant stenosis. At that point, the question shifts from, will a stroke ever happen, to, when will it happen if nothing changes? That is why surgeons may suggest carotid endarterectomy, a procedure that opens the artery and removes the plaque, dramatic sounding, but in modern practice a routine operation that prevents tens of thousands of strokes a year. 2. HbA1c, glycated hemoglobin. A blood test that measures the percentage of your hemoglobin coated with glucose. The more sugar that has been circulating over the past few months, the higher the number. That is why this test reflects average blood sugar over roughly 3 months, and why you can't fake a clean result by eating well for a day before the draw. HbA1c is especially good at catching the pre-diabetes gray zone, where sugar has been quietly damaging vessels for years, but nobody has slapped a label on it. The cutoffs, under about 5.7% is normal, 5.7 to 6.4% is prediabetes, 6.5% or higher generally fits diabetes. 3. Holter monitoring of the ECG, a 24-hour heart rhythm recording. Instead of a 10 or 20-second ECG in the clinic, you wear a small device for a full day. Some dangerous rhythm problems come and go. They might appear once or twice for a few seconds and be missed by a brief snapshot. The biggest rhythm offender for stroke is atrial fibrillation, or AFib. In AFib, the upper chambers of the heart stop beating in an organized rhythm and instead quiver chaotically, sometimes at 300 to 400 contractions per minute. Blood doesn't empty cleanly from the atria, it churns and swirls, and in that swirling pool, clots form easily. Those clots can shoot out of the heart, travel up to the brain, and lodge in an artery, producing a cardioembolic stroke, typically a severe one. Many people with AFib feel nothing dramatic, at most, an occasional skipped beat. Holter monitoring catches those hidden episodes. If AFib is found, properly prescribed anticoagulants can cut stroke risk in that condition by roughly 60 to 70%. Stroke is not a bolt from a clear sky. It is a predictable event that almost always follows years of silent vessel damage, and it almost always announces itself in advance. The Big Five: brief blindness in one eye, sudden one-sided numbness or tingling, abrupt loss of coordination, the unprovoked stagger, sudden serious speech breakdown, and vitiligo paired with new, unusual headaches. Any of these appearing for the first time, even if it disappears within a minute, is a reason to speak with a doctor urgently and ask about the 3 evaluations we covered: carotid duplex ultrasound, HbA1c, and Holter monitoring. On the prevention side, the levers research links most clearly to lower stroke risk are these. Keep blood sugar in a healthy range and catch prediabetes early. That protects the endothelium and slows plaque growth. Manage blood pressure with your doctor, avoiding both extremes, to lower both hemorrhagic and ischemic risk. Quit smoking, with help if you need it, and you cut your ischemic stroke risk by roughly a factor of 2 to 4 over time. And do not wait for brief brain symptoms to vanish on their own. You have about 72 hours to act. Here's the one thing I want you to do this week. If you recognized any of the 5 warning signs from your own life, even from months ago, write them down in plain words and bring the list to your doctor. Don't trust memory in the room. Ask directly whether you should be evaluated for TIA and whether a carotid ultrasound, HbA1c, and Holter monitor make sense for you. In the comments, tell me how old you are. That one piece of information shapes which causes of stroke are most likely for you. If you know someone over 60, a parent, a sibling, a spouse, a longtime friend, please send this video to them. These signs aren't intuitive, and people get talked out of seeking help precisely because the symptoms fade. Your share could be the reason someone in your life uses their 72-hour window. Subscribe so the next video finds you. Everything we covered today is for your understanding and education. Your situation belongs to you, and using this as a starting point for a real conversation with your doctor will always be more useful than managing things on your own. That is the advice of someone who wants you still watching 10 years from now. I'm Dr. Emily Chen. See you on the next video.